Hitler, you probably didn't even hate the Jews. That was just the meth making you crazy, dog.
Both of you, get back in the closet. You deserve a fucking ass whooping. All of you, get back in the closet. Go fuck yourself.
How much does it cost for fascism? How much do the taxpayers have to pay for a fascist country?
They're evil. They are actively doing evil. So treat them like the evil that they are.
The right to exist argument has been used now to the point where what it's going to mean is that the Israel you're talking about will include the annexed and illegally occupied West Bank. It's very interesting, the Israeli government has never said where it thinks the borders of Israel really ought to be and what it would settle for. I think it would be an immense help if it tells us where it thinks Israel's boundaries should be. Every other country does do that.
It's time to stop pretending otherwise. It's time to be ruthless and time to afford them the same amount of grace that they give to their Palestinian victims, because they are only going to get more and more ruthless with their victims if you don't.
Hey, what's going on? We'll start with headlines and go into more specific stories.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's announced plans to call up 60,000 reservists as it escalates its operation. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's announced plans to call up 60,000 reservists as it escalates its operation to seize all of Gaza City and to forcibly remove the city's entire population. Al Jazeera reports Israel's carrying out systematic demolitions of Palestinian homes across Gaza City. On Wednesday, Israel killed at least 81 Palestinians, including 5 in an attack on a tent in the Shati camp in Gaza City. The attack killed 3 children, ages 4, 7, and 9, along with their parents. Israel's killed another 20 Palestinians since dawn today. At least 2 more Palestinians have starved to death, bringing the total to 271. Meanwhile, an Israeli newspaper has revealed the Israeli military has a population relocation unit to
Population relocation unit. The euphemisms are crazy, but it really seems like the massacres are ramping up.
At least 9, along with their Shati camp in Gaza City. The attack killed 3 children, ages 4, 7, and 9, along with their parents. Israel's killed another 20 Palestinians since dawn today. At least 2 more Palestinians have starved to death, bringing the total to 271. Meanwhile, an Israeli newspaper has revealed the Israeli military has a population relocation unit to oversee the forced displacement of Palestinians in Gaza. Earlier today, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned Israel's escalation in Gaza City.
I must reiterate that it is vital to reach immediately a ceasefire in Gaza and the unconditional release of all hostages, and to avoid the massive deaths and destruction that a military operation against Gaza City would inevitably cause.
Israel's government's granted final approval to a settlement project in the occupied West Bank that would effectively split Palestinian territory in 2, sabotaging efforts at creating a future Palestinian state. The E1 settlement would see the construction of about 3,400 new housing units and would sever one of the few remaining territorial links between major Palestinian cities like Ramallah in the northern West Bank and southern cities like Bethlehem. Approval of the E1 settlement quickly drew international outrage. The UN Secretary General condemned the plan as a, quote, existential threat to the 2-state solution, unquote, while British Foreign Secretary David Lammy condemned it as a flagrant breach of international law. The U.S. State Department's fired its top press officer for Israeli-Palestinian affairs. The Washington Post reports the officer, Shahad Qureshi, was fired days after he recommended expressing condolences for journalists killed in Gaza and for opposing the forced displacement of Palestinians. In one case, Qureshi had drafted a press statement that read, quote, "We do not support forced displacement of Palestinians in Gaza," unquote, but State Department vetoed the language. The U.S. State Department sanctioned 4 more officials at the International Criminal Court. It's the latest move by the Trump administration to retaliate against the court for issuing an arrest warrant last year for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister for crimes against humanity and war crimes in Gaza. On Wednesday, UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric condemned the U.S. actions.
The decision imposes severe impediments on the functioning of the Office of the Prosecutor in respect for all the situations that are currently before the court. Judicial independence is a basic principle that must be respected. And these types of measures undermine the foundation of international justice.
Russia escalated its assault on Ukraine overnight, firing 574 drones and 40 ballistic and cruise missiles in one of its biggest aerial attacks of the year. At least 1 civilian was killed and 15 injured in the latest Russian attack. Russia also hit an American electronics manufacturer in western Ukraine near the Hungarian border. Meanwhile, the Kremlin has yet to commit to talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, despite calls for a summit by President Trump. Russia is also demanding to be part of any future security guarantees for Ukraine, a position strongly opposed by Kyiv and European leaders. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said, quote, seriously discussing issues of ensuring security without the Russian Federation is a utopia, a road to nowhere, he said. The Wall Street Journal reports President Trump has ordered the Pentagon to send 3 U.S. Navy warships to South America, including near the coast of Venezuela. This comes after Trump recently signed a secret directive authorizing the U.S. military to carry out attacks in Latin America to target drug cartels. On Tuesday, the Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, warned the U.S. against using military force in the region.
The Americans are wrong if they think that by invading Venezuela they are solving their problems. They're putting Venezuela in the same situation as Syria, but they would drag Colombia into the same because these groups would take over underground resources and minerals. And this means more economy of death, not of life. So I told the United States through its envoys that invading Venezuela would be the worst mistake.
Texas's Republican-led House of Representatives have approved a new congressional district map designed to flip 5 Democratic-held U.S. House seats in the 2026 midterm elections. A bill redrawing the maps to favor Republicans passed along party lines Wednesday, advancing the legislation to Texas's Republican-controlled Senate, where its approval is all but guaranteed. This rare instance of mid-decade redistricting came at the behest of President Trump. Its passage was held up for weeks after more than 50 Democratic lawmakers fled Texas to deny Republicans quorum for a vote. They returned to Austin this week amidst threats by Republican leaders to have them arrested or removed from office and replaced. Houston Representative John Rosenthal said he and fellow Democrats will sue to block the gerrymandered map once it's signed into law by the Republican Governor Greg Abbott.
It's not just a power grab. It's the fact that because they're going to lose, they want to pick up more votes, but it's the way they're going about it, by dismantling black and brown districts. And let's face it, this is a racist power grab that especially goes after our African-American representatives in Congress.
A federal appeals court has cleared the way for the Trump administration to revoke temporary protected status for 60,000 people from Honduras, Nepal, and Nicaragua. Immigrant rights advocates warn the decision could lead to the deportation of families who've lived lawfully in the United States for decades. In other immigration news,
just trying to find more people to deport in an effort to ethnically cleanse the United States.
New York lawmakers have condemned the Trump administration for deporting a 6-year-old New York elementary school student. The girl and her mother were detained at an ICE check-in last week, then deported to Ecuador Tuesday. The girl's elementary school principal had urged ICE to halt the deportation, saying her, quote, unexpected removal will cause significant disruption to her learning and will likely have a deep emotional impact on her classmates and our entire school community, unquote. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, federal immigration agents tackled and zip-tied a protester outside San Francisco's ICE office on Wednesday. Officers also pepper-sprayed a number of people, including a journalist. In Washington, D.C., Vice President J.D. Vance, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and Trump advisor Stephen Miller were repeatedly booed and heckled Wednesday as they visited National Guard troops stationed at Union Station. Some in the crowd chanted, from D.C. to Palestine, occupation is a crime. This comes as the National Guard's expanding its presence in the nation's capital after...
I called him couch fucker. Hang on. He turns his head. Called him pussy boy. Alright, you see him right there.
There's 6 Republican governors the crime at Union Station. Some in the crowd chanted, from D.C. to Palestine, occupation is a crime. This comes as the National Guard's expanding its presence in the nation's capital after 6 Republican governors deployed troops to support Trump's takeover of the D.C. police. President Trump's called on Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook to resign in his latest attack on the Fed's independence. Cook, who's the first black woman to ever serve as a Fed governor, has rejected Trump's call, saying she won't be bullied into stepping down. Trump has also repeatedly threatened to fire Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Trump's threat against Cook came after a Trump official alleged she once committed mortgage fraud by claiming 2 properties to be her primary residence. Another federal judge has rejected the Justice Department's request to unseal grand jury testimony related to the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking case. Judge Richard Berman wrote, quote, The government is the logical party to make comprehensive disclosure. Charles, Missouri has become the latest community to fight off plans to build a massive AI data center. The developer of the project withdrew the plans this week amidst growing community opposition to the secretive project. The community never even learned which company was behind the proposal. And police in Redmond, Washington, arrested 18 people at a protest encampment at Microsoft's headquarters Wednesday. The protest was organized by the group No Azure for Apartheid, which is made up of current and former Microsoft workers opposed to Microsoft's work with the Israeli military. Microsoft provides AI and cloud technology used by Israeli forces in Gaza. Microsoft has also helped Israel carry out mass surveillance of Palestinians. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.
So, of course, we've been talking a lot about Gaza lately, and the fact that it absolutely is a live stream genocide. And now Israel has come out and admit, yeah, we're going to reoccupy all of Gaza. We're going to take all of Gaza. We're going to build settlements there. We're going to kill a lot of the Palestinians. Those who remain, we're going to try to ethnically cleanse and deport them to South Sudan or Libya. They're working on deals to try to complete the ethnic cleansing. And this certainly is not getting talked about with the urgency that it deserves. The outrage is not matched to the facts on the ground. And at the same time this is going on, people don't quite realize Israel's also making a move on the West Bank. So part of what Israel's trying to do here, as you know, they're trying to create what's called a Greater Israel. Now, this was viewed as a conspiracy theory at the beginning of the genocide, but come to find out, this is another thing that Netanyahu admitted. Indeed, that's true. He said, I'm on a spiritual mission to create a Greater Israel. That's what Netanyahu said. So all the things that were considered conspiracies now, they've effectively admitted all of them. Reoccupying Gaza, Greater Israel. And so look at what's happening in the West Bank. So this is an article from back in May of this year. Israel announces major expansion of settlements in the occupied West Bank. Israeli ministers say 22 new Jewish settlements have been approved in the occupied West Bank, the biggest expansion in decades. Several already exist as outposts built with government authorization, but will now be made legal under Israeli law. Others are completely new, according to Defense Minister Israel Katz and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, both wild extremists. Settlements, which are widely seen as illegal under international law, though Israel disputes this, are one of the most contentious issues between Israel and the Palestinians. Katz said the move prevents the establishment of a Palestinian state that would endanger Israel, while the Palestinian presidency called it a dangerous escalation. So, you're literally running a social experiment, right? The social experiment is, okay, what happens when they violently resist? Well, that would be what happens in Gaza, right, with Hamas. Well, when Palestinians violently resist, Israel decides, we're going to genocide you. That's their reaction, okay? But here, you also have an example in the West Bank with the Palestinian Authority, who runs there. It's not Hamas who runs it there, it's the Palestinian Authority, Fatah. What happens when you resist peacefully? When you're not nearly as militant as Hamas is, right? Well, what happens there? The same thing is happening. They're building 22 new settlements. They're trying to destroy any chance at a Palestinian state, and they're trying to resettle it and take it all over there as well. So that just goes to show Israel is going to do what Israel wants to do, and the idea, oh, the Palestinians did this differently or that differently, the result will be different.
Zionism has to be destroyed, like, forever.
Wrong. Israel wants all the land, they want all the territory, they don't want any Palestinians there, and they're going to make that come about come hell or high water. Another example here, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee told Israel's Army Radio that Washington does not oppose Israel's plan to move forward with massive settlement construction in the E1 area of east of Jerusalem. Okay, so what's this E1 area? What does that mean? What's E1? Observers warn the project would completely sever the West Bank and destroy Palestinian territorial continuity, I think I was supposed to say, or contiguity? Never saw that word. The United Nations has said it would drive a stake through the heart of the prospects of a two-state solution. So do you understand what's happening here? It could not be more clear. Effectively, the plan to annex the entire West Bank has been greenlit. By the way, you go back and look, I warned you.
I love how they green light themselves to steal land. Like, it's such a weird... It's weird.
Coming up, we'll be joined by Omar Zaza, author of Terms of Servitude, a groundbreaking new book documenting how digital platforms and tech companies based in the United States support Israeli settler colonialism and genocide. Ali will take us through the latest developments in the case of Tom Alexandrovich, a senior Israeli cyber warfare official arrested by Las Vegas police for pedophilia, but allowed to flee the U.S. Later on in the program, John will cover the latest resistance news from across Gaza, including operations in Jabalia, Shujaiya, and Khan Yunis, as well as a multi-stage ambush in the Zaytun neighborhood of southern Gaza City. But first, let's take a look at the news. Here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine. Israel has killed at least 400 Palestinians and injured nearly 2,700 between August 13th and August 20th, according to official records from the Ministry of Health in Gaza. The Israeli army has been obliterating entire city blocks in Gaza City and other areas in northern Gaza, as Palestinian children, men, and women starve to death, and as Israeli forces and American mercenaries continue to trap and kill starving Palestinians seeking meager amounts of food. According to the health ministry, 22 people were killed and 49 were injured at so-called aid distribution sites on Wednesday alone, bringing the total recorded number to 2,018 killed and 14,950 injured since May 27th, when the U.S.-led Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began its lethal operations. As part of its intention to fully invade, occupy, and destroy Gaza City, the Israeli army has intensified its attacks on Al Zaytun neighborhood, with continuous airstrikes, artillery shelling, and gunfire. These attacks have resulted in the mass slaughter of Palestinian families and massive destruction of buildings and public facilities, the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights stated on Wednesday. The commission added that, quote, hundreds of families have been forced to flee, including many children, people with disabilities, and older people with nowhere safe to go amid dire humanitarian conditions, while others reportedly remain trapped, completely cut off from food, water, and medicine supplies. Over 2 weeks, the UN recorded at least 54 attacks on residential buildings and entire blocks in Gaza City, killing entire families in airstrikes and shelling. Attacks were also recorded on shelters of forcibly displaced people, including tents and schools. These figures, the UN says, quote, represent only a portion of the true toll due to underreporting in such dire circumstances. They indicate that the systematic destruction of Gaza City is already underway. Euromed Human Rights Monitor has reported that Israeli occupation forces have been using remote-controlled vehicles packed with explosives to destroy buildings in Al Zaytun in order to force Palestinians out of their homes and shelters. The army has flattened approximately 400 homes with explosive-laden robots and aerial bombardment, Euromed.
And they've apparently been doing this, like, suicide robot operation for months.
Quote, this wide-scale military operation mirrors similar assaults in Rafah, Khan Yunis, and northern Gaza, aimed at obliterating entire communities and forcibly displacing all who remain. Launched on August 11th, the operation represents Israel's ongoing push to assume total and unlawful control over Gaza City.
Okay, well, I guess it was launched on August 11th, so 10 days.
The intent is to evacuate long-standing residents and up to 1 million displaced individuals, most having fled northern Gaza, and confine them to isolated, small areas in the south. Drones, specifically quadcopters, are being deployed to encircle residential blocks and coerce civilians into fleeing under armed threat, the human rights group adds. Maha Husseini, a researcher with Euromed, stated on August 17th that, quote, Israel managed to exterminate most of Gaza's journalists. Today, it is carrying out an obliteration campaign against Gaza's largest neighborhood, Zaytun, under almost no media coverage. The Palestinian Civil Defense warned this week that their rescue workers are unable to reach or treat the dead and wounded in Al Zaytun, and the residents of Gaza City have nowhere else to go. Approximately 50,000 Palestinians are in Al Zaytun, and rescuers can't protect its residents as Israeli forces annihilate the city. Quote, we are living under extremely harsh conditions in Gaza City with no means of survival. The people of Gaza have no option left but death, the spokesperson for the Civil Defense stated. That was in Al Zaytun.
Just apocalyptic images.
Gaza City this week. Other areas in Gaza City and northern Gaza have been destroyed in escalating Israeli attacks. In the Tufah neighborhood on August 17th, reporter Mahmoud al-Awaidia documented the widespread devastation left behind by the Israeli army. Quote, there is massive destruction as far as the eye can see, he says, as the camera pans around an entire landscape of rubble, including the remains, he says, of the Al-Mahata mosque. As Israel's mass destruction of Gaza City accelerates, so does its policies of forced displacement and expulsion. Satellite images released this week show the emptying of tent shelters, at least 132 buildings destroyed, and 58 Israeli military vehicles, including 17 bulldozers, moving into the city, Sky News reported. Al Jazeera English's Hani Mahmoud said on Wednesday that, quote, more people are now receiving phone calls from the Israeli military warning them not to be in areas where they've lived all their lives and threatening them that they're going to be in the line of fire if they stay in these areas, asking them to leave as soon as possible, giving them just a little window of time. People are leaving behind their belongings, he said, including whatever food supplies they managed to obtain in the past few weeks. Tarek Abu Azoum, also with Al Jazeera, said on August 19th that, quote, there has been a huge focus by the Israeli army on targeting the eastern portions of Gaza City, destroying the civilian infrastructure and dismantling the civilian fabric there. Some families have moved to other parts of Gaza and started to set up tents close to the coast. There are also huge portions of Gaza City residents determined to live close to their communities and homes, even as attacks continue to unfold in other parts of the Gaza Strip. Our contributor, Asim Al-Nabih, who is also the spokesperson for the Gaza municipality in Gaza City, posted to social media that, quote, the idea of losing Gaza forever has driven people here to madness. They would rather die than be torn from it. They would rather be killed literally on Gaza's land than see our city turned into nothing more than a memory. We are the ones who know this city best. We are its people, its children, its lovers, its rightful keepers. We have carried its stones in our hands, breathed its sea breeze, felt both its tenderness and its harshness. We have lived its beauty, its longing, its wounds. No one belongs to Gaza more than we do. So leave us, just leave it to us. Let us be the ones to grieve it. Let us be the ones to weep for its martyrs. But leave us here, just leave us here. That was from Asim al-Nabih, writing from Gaza City. Meanwhile, Western and regional states continue to send lethal airdropped parcels of food aid instead of forcing Israel to open the crossings to the thousands of aid trucks that remain blocked or, at best, trickled in. On August 17th, an airdropped aid package killed an elderly Palestinian man in southern Gaza. Sabr al-Zamili, 75 years old, was inside a tent when the package fell directly on him, according to his family. He was preparing to head to the mosque for his daily prayers, his son told the publication Middle East Eye, and his daughter Sarah said his body was retrieved from beneath the package with severe injuries. Quote, his entire body was broken, she said. The United Nations reported this week that only 47% of the 2,000 metric tons of food supplies required daily to meet basic humanitarian food assistance needs has been allowed to enter Gaza. Starvation in Gaza is at the worst level since October 2023, and what has entered is insufficient to meet even the minimum.
That, as well as almost every single one of these drops, has killed somebody on impact.
Caloric intake needs, the UN stated. Included in the limited quantities of food are mainly dry goods. However, the risk of spoilage and infestation of food supplies has drastically increased due to being stranded for months, heat, and impending expiration dates. Furthermore, the UN notes, cooking gas has not entered Gaza for over 5 months, and firewood has become increasingly unaffordable, forcing many to use waste and scrap wood as alternative cooking sources, exacerbating health and environmental risks. Since the beginning of August, the Children's Fund UNICEF says it was able to deliver limited amounts of therapeutic food for acutely malnourished children, as well as infant formula for just 1,200 babies. But children and adults alike are continuing to die of starvation. Since March, nearly 100,000 children under the age of 5 have been screened by UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees. This week, UNRWA reported that in less than 6 months, child malnutrition has tripled across the Gaza Strip, and in Gaza City, nearly 1 in every 3 children is now malnourished, 6 times higher than before Israel broke the so-called ceasefire in mid-March. The Gaza Government Media Office stated on August 17th that the ongoing prevention of allowing meat, fish, dairy products, fresh produce, and other basic foods is part of its policy of deliberate starvation. Quote, even if a few trucks enter in very limited quantities, the occupation deliberately leaves these trucks vulnerable to looting by its affiliates, prevents their safe arrival to those entitled to them, and even kills anyone who attempts to secure these trucks, the media office said. On Wednesday, August 20th, the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza recorded 3 new deaths from starvation and malnutrition, bringing the total number to 269 recorded deaths by starvation, including 112 children. Speaking to the Electronic Intifada podcast this week, Dr. Thaer Ahmed explained that forced and sustained starvation is shaving.
Welcome to the stream, Vitor. Always a pleasure.
Years off of Palestinians' lives, especially children, whose cognitive and growth development is dependent on good nutrition in their earliest stages. Quote, every day that passes that they are under these conditions of malnourishment, especially the severe ones, you are gambling with their future. They have cognitive issues that will develop as a result of this that will be irreversible, Ahmed noted. Children's immune systems will be irrevocably weaker, he says, adding that children will have shorter statures and developmental delays, not reaching the classic milestones that we see kids reach, even crawling and then walking, or then speaking. All of these things get delayed, he says. They get pushed back because of what's being inflicted on them. For more, watch or listen to What Does Israel's Starvation of Gaza Do to the Human Body on electronicintifada.net. Israeli and American mercenary forces operating the private so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites continue to trap, injure, and kill starving Palestinians, including children, every day. Defense for Children International Palestine released a report this week documenting 2 separate incidents in July, where Palestinian children were shot and injured by the Israeli military while trying to obtain food from aid distribution areas as part of Israel's ongoing genocidal campaign against Palestinians. 15-year-old Mohammed al-Hawati told the children's rights group, quote, while I was in the waiting area by Wadi Gaza Bridge, we were monitored by an Israeli quadcopter. We waited there for half an hour for the aid delivery gate to open. As soon as the gate opened, we rushed towards the gate when 5 Israeli tanks appeared and opened fire directly at us, resulting in numerous martyrs and injuries. I am an orphan, having lost both my parents. I have to go to the American aid point in Netzarim to obtain food for my 8 siblings and myself, Mohammed said. DCIP says that Israeli forces targeted a group of starving Palestinians on July 27, 2025, while they made their way to the U.S.-registered Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid station at the Netzarim corridor in central Gaza to collect food and supplies. This tragic incident led to the loss of 18 lives, including 2 children, and left 10 others injured, also including 2 children, among them Mohammed. He says, quote, I was struck in the head by an expanding bullet.
For an hour, I remained under fire from the Israeli army, bleeding profusely. The aid gate finally opened at 11:30 a.m. After that, I crawled and stumbled, barely conscious, until I reached the Nuseirat intersection, Mohammed added. The Center for Constitutional Rights in New York, meanwhile, filed a lawsuit seeking records from the Trump administration over its funding of the private U.S.-registered Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The lawsuit comes on the heels of the legal group's official notification in June to the GHF, warning of its potential legal liability for complicity in Israel's war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide against Palestinians. The lawsuit also follows the Trump administration's failure to comply with the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA request submitted last month. The lawsuit, filed on August 20th, seeks records that could shed light on not only the decision-making process behind the $30 million grant it received from the USAID, which was approved by the U.S. State Department, but also on the creation of GHF, its funding, and how it plans to use the grant. The Center for Constitutional Rights says it is particularly interested in information that could reveal whether the administration's distribution of funds has any links to President Trump's Gaza Riviera plan, which would cleanse the area of Palestinians and redevelop it for investors. Quote, GHF's militarized aid distribution model, which it designed in close coordination with the Israeli occupying power, is more suited to furthering the genocide than to providing much-needed humanitarian relief to a start.
Yeah, a financial connection to that would be absolutely insane.
That the flooding could not be fixed without coordination with Israel, as the source of the sewage leak is located in the no-go zone designated by the Israeli military and closed.
They've been dealing with flooding for the better part of a week now.
Palestinians. Because of the 22 months of widespread destruction of infrastructure to sewage lines and pumps, doctors say that waterborne diseases are skyrocketing. Dr. Munir Albersh, the Director General.
The main thing that I want to get to is the resistance report, although at the end she always has like signs of strength in Gaza, and I always want to check that out at least. I'll probably skip the middle part.
Every day are brought into Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital with a parasitic infection, Giardia, as a result of people resorting to drinking contaminated water.
What in the fuck?
Especially as the summer temperatures rise.
Contracting zoonotic diseases.
Also said this week that hospital beds are at 300% occupancy. Quote, an unprecedented figure that reflects the scale of the health and humanitarian catastrophe we are experiencing today.
When I heard that figure 300%, I was like, oh my gosh, it must be 3 people to a room. And then I see this picture of 3 children in one hospital bed.
Compounding the health crisis, the health ministry reported this week that 49% of laboratory testing materials are completely out of stock. 51% of laboratory consumables and supplies are out of stock. Many basic tests in operating rooms and intensive care units have run out or are about to run out. Excuse me. Most of the materials needed to check blood levels for patients who have undergone kidney and liver transplants have run out. Complete blood count or CBC testing materials, which are the basic test for visitors to healthcare facilities, are about to run out, and what is available is sufficient for only a limited number of days. Materials for testing blood units for viral infections are sufficient for only a few more days as well, posing a risk of unsafe blood transfusions. Blood bags and blood transfusion kits are only sufficient for less than a month from now, and approximately 45% of laboratory equipment has been damaged or destroyed and requires maintenance and spare parts. A journalist was killed this week. Islam El-Komi, who worked as a reporter and content creator for different media platforms, was killed along with his son when Israel bombed their tent in Gaza City on August 19th. The Gaza government media office said that with El-Komi's killing, the number of journalists and media workers murdered since October 2023 has risen to 239. Following the hunting and targeted assassinations by the Israeli military of 6 reporters on August 10th, including Anas al-Sharif and Mohammed Kureika, Gaza journalist Saleh al-Jafarawi is now being threatened by Israel.
I was thinking, like, what are the odds of one of these journalists being killed on camera, like, while they're reporting? And that frequency would make you think, well, maybe, maybe it's only a matter of time at this rate. But no, Israel makes a point of striking at night when they're asleep with their families.
On August 14th, al-Jafarawi said that the spokesperson for the Israeli army, Avichai Adrai, along with other military and Hebrew media figures, has put a target on his back. Quote, you either live as you want or you live as they want, he says. You live with your head held up high, broadcasting both audio and video. We will not kneel to them, God willing. I won't hide from you. Saleh might be the next martyr, or it could be one of my colleagues who will be the next martyr. We could all be subjected to what Anas and our colleagues are subjected to, he said. We've published many features on the Electronic Intifada in the last week, but we wanted to highlight I Envy My Dead Best Friend by journalist and English graduate Khaled
God damn.
writing from Gaza City. Khaled writes about his best friend Mohammed Hammo, who was killed by Israel in November 2023. Hammo was a contributor to the Electronic Intifada. Quote, my tears for Mohammed have decreased recently. I stopped worrying for him, not because my grief has lessened, or because I feel any relief at his absence, or because my love for him is fading. But I stopped worrying simply because I know with certainty that Mohammed is in a better place. I even feel jealous of him. May he rest in peace. And I wish I was him. Mohammed was not displaced several times or forced to cook over a wood fire, surviving on scant amounts of water and sleeping without a blanket. He had not gone to the Netzarim or Rafah aid distribution points, where hundreds of starving people seeking food have been killed by the Israeli army. He did not wait hours for a bag of flour at an aid site only to get nothing. He did not go to bed hungry for days, feeling himself starved to death. He was not forced to drink salty or contaminated water. He was not left to wander with nowhere to shelter. I consider Mohammed to be the luckiest, as he did not spend the last 2 years of his life in fear, as bombs shook the ground beneath him. He did not have to mourn and bury his loved ones, one by one, until none were left. Mohammed himself was never buried. His body still lies beneath the rubble, with no grave I can visit, even if the war were to end. But I visit him every day. He is always with me, alive in my mind, and as long as we, his friends, remember him, Mohammed will live on.
There are so many people still underneath the rubble. The rubble, probably more than have been counted, are probably still under the rubble. And this echoes to the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They said that the people who died first were the lucky ones in the blast. They said in the Holocaust, the people who died first in the chambers were the lucky ones. How can you say that this is not one of the darkest moments of human history? That we're experiencing the closest thing you can have to firsthand in the modern age.
Those are excerpts from I Envy My Dead Best Friend by Khaled al-Kushali, writing from Gaza on electronicintifada.net. And finally, as we always do, we wanted to highlight people expressing joy, determination, and resilience across Palestine.
We've got it in writing. We've got the genocide on video. We've got images. Every way you can document it.
2 days before his brother Mohammed was killed with Anas al-Sharif in Gaza City, photographer Ibrahim Nafal filmed a group of music students practicing their instruments in a tent shelter. He says,
Is this Ahmed Mouin and his music students?
In a place drowning in grief, Gaza's children have chosen music as a form of therapy and a symbol of resilience. Between the tents and in the middle of war, it's crazy, right? We're dying. We sacrifice martyrs, dying of hunger. Life is almost non-existent, but there are people with hope in art, in something very beautiful that happens in the tents. This is the music school among the tents. Students learn the oud, the flute, the tabla, and the guitar. This is real resilience, he says.
بين الخيام وفي نص الحرب إشي جنوني صح احنا بنموت بنقدم شهداء ميتين من الجوع الحياة معدومة تقريبا ولكن في ناس لسه في عندها أمل في فن في إشي كثير جميل بيصير بين الخيام هاي مدرسة موسيقى بين الخيام طلاب بيتعلموا عود بيتعلموا على الناي بيتعلموا على الطبلة بيتعلموا على الجيتار هذا الصمود الحقيقي.
And a group of kids were filmed playing with a parachute that was dropped with food parcels over Gaza. Ahmed
That was not Ahmed and his students. Maybe it was his students. But that was the kids just playing music independently. I think I recognize her, but I can't be sure.
And a group of kids were filmed playing with a parachute that was dropped with food parcels over Gaza. Ahmed al-Kilani, a photographer who captured the scene, said, quote, Gaza kids turn a parachute into joy, simple happiness, despite it. And that's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our
The same parachute connected to the parcels that have killed people, you know. It's wild.
Nora, thank you. We're out of words, but I've been checking in, trying official charge with child sex ring, police US, but as And then the
Damn.
other decision she criticizes, of course, is related to Alexandrovich. And she says, the most concerning question is when and how...
Vitor, do you know who Marjorie Taylor Greene is? Like, do you know how batshit she is? She's out of her mind. Far-right lunatic. And yet she's one of the only people talking sense about Israel. In the sense that we need to not offer them so much aid. It's remarkable, unprecedented, and shocking that there are far-right members of Congress or whatever making more sense on Gaza than a lot of so-called progressive voices. It's just remarkable to me.
How did America become so subservient to Israel that we immediately released...
Would it be anti-Semitic to drag Netanyahu's cyber executive director back and prosecute this POS to the full extent of the law? And at the same time, let Palestinian kids who had their limbs and bodies blown apart receive surgeries in America? Jeez. This is heat.
a child sex predator after arrest with a 100% locked up...
This is Marjorie Taylor Greene finally using her rabid insanity for a good cause.
case with evidence and let him off to fly back home to Israel. So what are the U.S. government officials and officials in Nevada, the state where Alexandrovich was arrested, saying about this? There appears to be a concerted effort to put forward the image that nothing unusual is going on here. On Monday, the U.S. State Department posted the following statement on Twitter X. Quote, the Department of State is aware that Tom Artyom Alexandrovich, an Israeli citizen, was arrested in Las Vegas and given a court date for charges related to soliciting sex electronically from a minor. He did not claim diplomatic immunity and was released by a state judge pending a court date. Any claims that the U.S. government intervened are false. Israel also downplayed the matter, confirming when the news broke earlier this week that Alexandrovich had returned home and asserting that it had no diplomatic implications. And here's a story published just this morning in the Nevada Independent, a nonprofit publication. The headline is, How an Israeli Child Sex Predator Was Able to Bail Out of Nevada Jail Without Breaking the Law. And it says, Clark County District Attorney Steve Wilson, who is responsible for prosecuting the case against Alexandrovich, told the Nevada Independent that the, quote, handling of this case was extremely typical. So nothing to see here, according to Wolfson. The story adds, when it comes to allowing the release of a person charged with a crime before a trial, courts in Nevada are required to impose the least restrictive means necessary to protect the safety of the community and ensure a person appears in court. Except under special circumstances, courts allow standard bail for people charged with a crime before they're brought before a judge on criminal charges, meaning the amount of money required to leave detention is preset by the court and requires no additional release conditions. End quote. Now, the article also states this, and this is important, keep it in mind, quote, after posting bail the day after he was charged, Alexandrovich returned to Israel. Foreign nationals are often deemed a flight risk in criminal cases, but Wolfson, that's the Clark County prosecutor, said that law enforcement didn't raise any red flags that would lead the office or police to believe that Alexandrovich was either a flight risk or danger to the community, end quote. The Nevada Independent article also quotes one of Alexandrovich's defense attorneys, a lawyer called David Chesnoff. And it says that Chesnoff confirmed via text messages that his client will attend all court dates he is required to be at. In another statement, he said the bail process used in the case was routine. I have been a practicing attorney in Nevada for 45 years and have seen our bail system work effectively throughout my career, and nothing happened here that was out of the ordinary, Chesnoff said. So we've just heard from Steve Wolfson, the Clark County District Attorney who was prosecuting the case, and the defense attorney for Alexandrovich, telling us that there's nothing amiss here, nothing to see, everything is perfectly normal. These two men are supposed to be on opposite sides, right? Prosecution and defense. Well, it turns out that Chesnoff, the defense attorney, is a huge campaign contributor to Wolfson, the prosecutor. Chesnov's wife, and Chesnov's law partner, Richard Schonfeld, who is also representing the Israeli official Tom Alexandrovich, gave a total of $35,000 in campaign contributions to Steve Wolfson's election campaign for district attorney in 2021. And you see a headline here from the Nevada Current: "Justice not blind in Clark County District Attorney's Office," says Wolfson's primary opponent. The story from the Nevada Current, and there are similar stories in other publications, reports that Wolfson also revealed huge campaign contributions from a casino magnate called Steve Wynn, who was accused by former employees of sexual harassment, coercion, indecent exposure, and rape. The Nevada Current reported that, quote, Wynn, according to the Wall Street Journal, paid a $7.5 million settlement to end a civil suit filed by a manicurist who says Wynn impregnated her during a rape, end quote. And that report adds, Nevada law has no statute of limitations to bring rape charges when the suspect is identified by DNA evidence and or a police report is filed within 20 years of the alleged incident. But Wolfson, again, that's the prosecutor, has made no effort to bring charges against Wynn and continues to accept Wynn's contributions. The same article also talks about the case of billionaire drug defendant Henry Nicholas and his companion Ashley Fargo, found in a Las Vegas hotel with enough drugs to warrant trafficking charges under previous standards. And that sparked a chorus of allegations that justice is for sale in Clark County. Nicholas and Fargo were allowed to plead on a relatively minor charge and make a contribution to charity to resolve the case. Guess who the lawyer was? The same David Chesnov, who is now representing Israeli government official and accused pedophile Tom Alexandrovich. Both defense attorney Chesnov and prosecutor Wolfson appear to be very friendly towards Israel. After October 7th, Chesnov flew to Israel to volunteer for several weeks because, as he told the Las Vegas Review-Journal, quote, I went with a purpose in mind and tried to volunteer to help in any way I could.
He's like an Israeli fixer lawyer. That's crazy. He goes really deep into this.
The violence. Shaddad has previously called for Israel to wipe Gaza off the map and label the entire population their terrorists and animals. And there's just so many vile, genocidal tweets on her personal account. But once the story broke, she deleted her personal account with those statements. But I have copies of them, and I posted some of them on Twitter X. Now, once Alexandrovich's return to Israel started to attract attention and criticism, Shattah tried to shift the blame, and she posted another statement from her official U.S. government account. She wrote, quote, a liberal district attorney and state court judge in Nevada failed to require an alleged child molester to surrender his passport, which allows him to flee our country. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, just called me outraged, and she also called the FBI Director, Kash Patel. The individual who fled our country should have had his passport seized by the state authorities. He must be returned immediately to face justice. Steve Wolfson, the district attorney in Nevada that Shattah appears to be referring to, hit back at her, calling her comments proof of her unfitness to serve as U.S. attorney. So now these two are publicly squabbling. But remember that Shattah is the top federal prosecutor, and as soon as Alexandrovich was arrested, he was interrogated by federal agents from the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, who knew exactly who he was. She had and still has the power to file federal charges against Alexandrovich and demand Israel return him. But how likely is that to happen? I already mentioned that Israel is a notorious haven for Jewish sex offenders because it rarely extradites them back to the U.S.
Yes. Israel is a haven for sex offenders.
Or to other countries. And there is now new reporting from independent sex offenders in case that to happen. I already mentioned that Israel is a notorious haven for Jewish sex offenders because it rarely extradites them back to the U.S. or to other countries. And there is now new reporting from independent journalist Jack Paulson and Harrison Berger. They report on a major leak within Israel's Justice Ministry that reveals over 2,100 international legal requests, including multiple U.S. extradition cases for child sex abuse suspects that Israel delayed or ignored. Berger states, quote, the leaks show the delayed or failed attempts of the U.S. Department of Justice to extradite various sex abusers from Israel where they had fled to evade justice. So what are the chances that Israel will extradite one of its top cyber warfare officials back to the US to face justice? And what are the chances that the Trump administration and prosecutors like Steve Wolfson, Sigal Shattah, and Attorney General Pam Bondi will insist that it does? And while Israel...
All right, so you are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. I am John Elmer. This is the Resistance Report.
Let's get into the Resistance Report here.
Israel's criminal genocide. I am reporting this on the 21st of August. We will start with the maps because we are going to take a look today all across Gaza. You can see these are still the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs mapping that were used. The purple is the shoot to kill zones. The white areas are the areas where people are living in tents. And some buildings remain in Deir al-Balah in the middle camps area. And of course, Israel is planning on invading Gaza City as part of this expanding Operation Gideon's Chariots. They couldn't decide on the name because previous weeks, as listeners and watchers of this program know, we quoted many times Israeli military officials saying that Gideon's Chariots operation that began on May 19th was over. But now they're apparently, they just decided last night that they're going to be calling the Gaza City invasion Gideon's Chariots B, Part B. So what we have been watching for the last...
Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Gideon's Chariot failed. So they're like, yeah, we're still going, I guess. That's their...
It's Gideon Chariots A. So the Israeli military released some figures about that operation just yesterday. The operation that effectively began in March when Israel reneged on the ceasefire agreement that was guaranteed by the United States, Egypt, and Qatar. Israel reneged on the agreement, which was a multi-phased agreement, and Israel pulled out of that, leaving their captives in Gaza, who they have repeatedly proven don't matter at all, and this Gaza City invasion will be the final straw of that for those captives. But Israel has not achieved any of its military goals in Gaza that were clearly articulated. Return the captives.
And it's because of the resistance keeping them out of these areas here. It's why Israel is sending in explosive drone trucks out of desperation.
Violence, destroy the Qassam brigades, destroy the government capacity in the Gaza Strip, and make Gaza no longer a threat. Those were their stated goals of the war, and they've achieved none of them. And so they're just continuing to fight. And this plan for Gaza City involved the call-up of 130,000 reservists to fight. There's talk of it being a 14-brigade combat operation, which is a significant operation, upwards of 5 divisions participating in the battle in Gaza City. And based on the notices that were given out to soldiers for the reservists, some of them went out this week, that operation will begin. It was supposed to begin, it was planned to begin October 7th, but Netanyahu's trying to push that date up. The reservists are going to be called in 3 waves that begin at the beginning of September. So we'll have to track how that goes. Looking at this map, just to say, the purple is the shoot-to-kill zone. It's not the zone that Israel controls, because when they were bragging about this, they released a statement the other day that talked about there has been 10,000 airstrikes.
I was gonna say, because this doesn't look like a map of what Israel controls. It looks like a map of what they want to encroach upon. But these are their shoot-to-kill zones. They largely cannot budge past this area where the word Rafah and Khan Yunis are. It's kind of a deadlock, like right there.
By the Israeli Air Force jets.
And this is based on from what I've been hearing from this report over the last few weeks, months.
Helicopters and drones since March 18th, since they collapsed the ceasefire, 10,000 airstrikes. The Gaza Health Ministry in that period of time has said that upwards of 11,000 Palestinians have been killed in that period. And Israel says Gideon's Chariot's goal was to capture 75% of the Gaza Strip. That is simply an absurd and not serious statistic. And the blue area, the purple area on this map is not Israeli control. They do not have operational control in those areas, as we're going to see today on the program. But there's nothing like that. They largely withdrew from Beit Lahia. People went back to Beit Lahia this week and saw, for example, Kamal Adwan Hospital completely destroyed. People yesterday managed to get back into the Tufa neighborhood in Gaza City, in eastern Gaza City. And the mass area of Khan Yunis that you see down at the bottom of that map is not controlled by the Israelis. They're operating mainly within the 2 corridors that they created. We will show a closer map when we get to that point. But just wanted to say 10,000 airstrikes, that's what the Israelis are talking about, and that is how their field reports read. They're very, very proud of it.
Airstrikes is all they can do, and send in explosive trucks.
But of course, as Nora reported, and we've reported on the show a number of times, the Israelis are also using all kinds of other weaponry. Artillery doesn't count in those, tank fire doesn't count in those, and they're using the M113 robot vehicle-borne IEDs, creating essentially a tank car bomb that they've been using in increasing numbers, particularly over the last week or two. Maybe we'll get into those and how they work on a future show, but today's show's packed, so we will move forward with that. We're going to start in the north, so we take a look at this northern Gaza map that was This is an Electronic Intifada original. Thanks to Maxwell for these maps. They've been useful throughout the whole war. You can see the Netzarim corridor there, and you can see the Zaytun neighborhood. It abuts the Netzarim corridor. And that has been the target of a surprise operation this week. It was unannounced operation. The Israeli military didn't say it was happening until 6 days into the operation, but immediately we saw the resistance hit them as soon as they came into that neighborhood. And in terms of the reservists, the call up right now, the immediate call up is 60,000 reservists. That will add to and create 130,000 called up for this operation. Like I said, 12 to 14 brigade level teams to participate in the Gaza invasion. This Zaytun operation is not directly connected to that Gaza City invasion, but it's a preliminary operation that is a 2-brigade operation in Zaytun, destroying hundreds of buildings. And the shortage of fighters, which we've been talking about on the show for months now, and the Israeli media talks about every day, particularly Army Radio is very attuned to this, with the soldiers all constantly complaining about being overworked. I'm going to read you just word for word an Army Radio report from Monday morning. Due to the shortages of soldiers, the IDF is considering reaching out to Jewish communities in the diaspora to encourage and recruit Jewish youth from abroad to its ranks. The shortage of soldiers, estimated to be around 12,000 missing from the IDF ranks, and the non-enlistment of the ultra-Orthodox are leading the army to try to exhaust every other possibility to replenish its ranks. This morning, we published, this is Army Radio, word for word, that the IDF intends to approach the large Jewish communities in the diaspora, aiming to encourage recruitment of Jewish youth of enlistment age who will come to the country for a few years to serve in the IDF, according to the work done by the Personnel Directorate on the subject. The recruitment potential among 18 to 25-year-olds in large Jewish communities is more than 10,000. So that can buy their...
Doesn't that sound appealing? Just a few years serving the IDF? Jeez.
They can replace their killed and seriously wounded soldiers that have been taken off the battlefield with a number of about 10,000. Senior IDF officials tell us at Army Radio the target we intend to set is an increase of about 600 to 700 additional soldiers each year from Jewish...
A few months or weeks or days sounds nauseating enough.
Communities abroad. The main communities that effort will focus on are the United States and France. And I'm reporting this from Canada and can almost assure you Canada will be involved in those too. So looking at this map that we have on screen here, we're going to be focusing today on Zaytun. We're going to show operations from Shujaiya and Tufa, as well as Jabalia. And the Jabalia camp is to the north of Jabalia there, and Beit Lahia is in the upper left corner across from adjacent to Beit Hanun, which has been turned into a moonscape. And the invasion of Gaza City is unclear exactly how this operation will take place. When it took place the first time, Israel said that they conquered Gaza and had operational control of it back in 2023 and early 2024. The attack came from the south. They came along the corridor and up through Tel Hawa, and also came down the coast on the western coast side from Beit Lahia down through into the beach refugee camp. And the Shati camp is the beach refugee camp. Shati put up significant resistance and held back the Israelis on their push into Gaza City. They did that with 3 full divisions at that time, and they believe they need more than that because people are not taking their call-up orders. We know from the beginning of Gideon's Chariots that at one point, Army Radio was reporting on missing soldiers numbering more than half of who were supposed to come back. So we're going to start in Zaytun because that's where this operation began this week.
What? More than half of the IDF soldiers not responding to calls?
You're seeing here a Nukba commander. He is setting up this operation saying that this comes in light of the escalating threats of the enemy towards our people in our beloved territory. We tell them slowly and clearly, you need to understand, we are here. We are in front of you, behind you, and everywhere. And what we're looking at here is these soldiers, that's Nukba force, has surveillance cameras, they have maps, they have drone footage that you can see that's overlaid on top. And this is a surprise operation. And they're showing you now an Israeli position under, they've got the 2 armored troop carriers there. And the commander says that we know this battle is difficult. Here you can see the troop leading procedures. They have each hill marked out on the target buildings. You can see where the Yasin archers are going to be positioned, 1 with a thermobaric warhead to hit the troops, 2 with Yasin 105s for the...
Yasin 105, those are RPGs. Their archers are the RPG wielding personnel.
For the non-armored troop carriers, and also the guerrilla action devices that they are going to take and hand deliver to the non-armored troop carriers that you see there. This is one of
Return to Sender
this week, targeting with Yasin's 10 IEDs and 12 artillery ops. So high quality operations immediately greeting the invasion. And this is a Nukba force, the elite commando force of the Qassam brigades. You can see they're on top of a massive map there with detail. So they're matching the layers, the surveillance, the mapping, the troop leading procedures, the predicting of Israeli positions. They have guessed right that the Israelis will take up this building. And as you'll see in the videos that come up, there's not very many other buildings. But then they also successfully predict the route that the Israelis will withdraw from, and they have Yasin archers on the reinforcements. So
Yo.
just a remarkably detailed operation
Whoa.
that we've been seeing all throughout the war. But this one in Zaytun is remarkable because the Israelis, this is a secret invasion. They didn't announce it. And this operation is 24 hours after the Israelis entered Zaytun. So let's take a look at number 3 because there's a detail here that I've been tracking, and I promised you I'd keep my eye on this. And if you look in the upper right corner there, you see the 2 guerrilla action devices. They're called the Bark, the lightning bolt. They are a small Shuad, a lighter Shuad that could be carried easier, that could be thrown. This is an adaptation that Qassam has made manufacturing in the field. I pointed it out to you guys in Jabalia when we first saw it. We saw it from the drone footage when the fighter ran up and threw it on top of the Merkava tank in Jabalia. Then we saw it in Khan Yunis, where it was thrown into the hatch after the fighter climbed up on the top of the Namr troop carrier and put it into the hatch. So we're seeing a new weapon here because this is now in Zaytun. So now we're seeing them now across Gaza. These weapons didn't exist before. They didn't exist in this battle or before. And the canisters that you're looking at there on the right-hand side of the screen, those are not the same size canisters as any previous Shawad. The explosively formed penetrator that the Qassam Brigades builds has had a number of iterations, like a dozen of them over the years, going back to 2006, where they've been perfecting the weapon. And none of the canisters of any other versions match that. So we're looking at manufacturing canisters in Gaza right now, filling them presumably with unexploded Israeli ordnance and deploying them on the battlefield because the fighters realized that there was a gap in that they were able to get up close to these armored vehicles and they were routinely seeing them with the hatch open. And this weapon is lighter, easier to carry. A fighter can carry 2 of them and they can throw them. So they can throw them up onto the top of the tank. And this is an issue in Israel because there is a heat wave in Gaza right now. And Israel Hayom reported in the paper yesterday, they had a piece on Namr troop carriers' air conditioning failures. The air conditioning failures meant that the cooling system in the Namr failed and the interior temperature can reach 60 degrees or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So the soldiers pop the hatches open. I mean, we've seen them pop the hatches in the winter too. But yeah, so Qassam has adapted to the battlefield conditions and manufactured a new weapon in the course of the war. The Namr troop carriers, it was said by the IDF weapons directorate yesterday that these vehicles, the tanks and the armored personnel carriers, have clocked 1 million kilometers of service inside the Gaza Strip in the past 2 years. So it's a malfunction of the air conditioners that creates a situation for these weapons to be used. And they quote an officer in the field: "Forces in the field have an impossible decision: disable a vehicle and halt operations due to logistical challenges, or operate against guidelines. Many commanders choose to proceed with operations despite the challenging and the danger." This officer says, "We're not allowed to enter buildings because they're booby-trapped, and we can't enter the APCs because the systems don't work. So what are we supposed to do?" The officer asks. "We're not asking for luxuries, but these are basic needs for fighting in the summer." And I wanted to put this in because this points to the fact that their machinery, if they were not being constantly resupplied by the Americans every single day virtually, that this war could straight up not happen. Because when those vehicles are taken off the field for whatever reason, because they're destroyed by the resistance, mobility killed by the resistance, or their air conditioners don't work, they are taken off the battlefield. And if they cannot be replaced by American shipments, this genocide would not continue. So I just
Imagine a failed air conditioner is your death warrant.
wanted to make that point. Let's look at the execution of this Zaytun operation, because this is all one video. I just chopped it up so that we could understand it better. So there's the 2 guerrilla action devices, and you can see the Yasin 105 there. There you can see the Yasin 105 thermobaric warhead. This fighter here in his Qassam shirt is going to have the 2 guerrilla action devices. And just like we saw on the piece of paper in the troop leading procedures, these fighters are advancing from these mounds. They know the way to go to get to this building using the mounds. And now we're going to see him right under, in those windows up there are 2 Israeli soldiers, both on scope. They're both on their gun. And this fighter is climbed right up. They apparently don't see him until maybe this moment when one of the soldiers pulls back. But there's the thermobaric warhead. There's the detonation of the guerrilla action device, the Bark, exploding on the Namr troop carrier underneath the eyes of the soldiers. And this operation has been planned so well that the second force comes in. So we're going to see this here one more time. You watch the way that they move from hill to hill as they go here. From undercover, now they're going to move to the...
Well, in the other previous iteration of that action device was a lot bigger and heavier, so now he's able to carry 2 instead of 1.
First block, and these are all planned in this operation 24 hours after the Israelis arrived there, and this is a Nukba elite commando operation. So they predicted which building is going to be used, which, look at the landscape, it's not that hard to pick which building is going to be used, but they guessed right, and they were prepared for this operation to hit the Israelis. As there's the 2 soldiers in the window looking out, and the fighter is right underneath the window, ready to throw his device. He's going to try to throw it into the Namr troop carrier through the open hole. You can see it there. It detonates. You could see the thermobaric warhead on the Yasin be pulled up into position to fire. And we can go to the next one after this, number five. Yeah, this is a continuation. There you see on the left side, there's the archer, Yasin archer, who's ready for reinforcements. He's providing cover there's the fighters withdrawing. So they have the Qassam unit that has covering fire support for that squad to withdraw, and now these two guys are heading out to hit the reinforcements, predicting that the reinforcements will come on these two routes. And there he fires, and on this one you'll see as well, this is the fighter is right beside the tank inside the house. If you look in the upper left, you'll see that was the first Yasin strike. And then this guy, you can see the tank helmet pointing out of the tank. He ducks down, but this fighter is spitting distance from the tank and blasts it directly through what would be the front door of the house, if that was there. We can go to the next clip. It's the same one to focus on this operation because it's pretty remarkable. He fires this one. He looks like he hits the active protection system directly. He's aiming for the turret gap, which we've talked about all war, the weakest spot on the vehicle, but he fires in there. And you can see that tank comes along a route that was predicted, and the fighter is in that position ahead of time, ready. So really well organized operation, command and control, dozen fighters participating, Nukba commandos, and right away, as soon as the Israelis arrive in Zaytun, there hasn't been a formal operation in Zaytun since before the ceasefire. So you're going back to 2024, but these fighters are in their positions ready to fight at any point. And so the first day that the Israelis roll in, the resistance is able to meet them. And we've seen that in every single location because the resistance is organized in territorial defenses. And that's a really good example of it here in Zaytun. The next one, number 7, we're on now. Here's a return to sender operation, rewiring a Mark 80 series bomb. It's tough to tell exactly if that's a 2,000 pound, might be a 1,000 pound bomb. Repurposing it here and detonating it against Israeli armored vehicles. Possibly it was a bulldozer, but a bulldozer was definitely hit in one of these operations because you're going to see after this significant explosion because that's the bomb that the Israelis dropped from the sky. That's how they get death tolls of 100,000 suspected at least. There's the D9 being towed away. And then there's one more, another operation here, just a Yasin strike against a tank that is also part of this Zaytun operation. The Zaytun operation began on Wednesday, and we have since then 14 Yasin strikes, 10 IEDs versus armored vehicles, and 11 artillery strikes.
When they thread the needle like that, it's so wild to watch because they're shooting through mouse holes, essentially. They're shooting through buildings.
The Zaytun operation began on Wednesday.
Like he's shooting through the corner of a building here. It's so wild.
Since then, 14 Yasin strikes, 10 IEDs versus armored vehicles, and 11 artillery strikes just in that first days of the Zaytun operation. We are going to go to Khan Yunis next because we also have an active operation.
If that were me, I would just be like, I can't do it, dude. I'm too worried about just shooting the wall and blowing myself up, you know?
Yunis, I'm going to show you this map. You can see the Moreg route there. You don't see the Magan Oz corridor, but it comes along and meets around Salahdin Road that you can see running up, running from the south to the north. The corridor, the Magan Oz corridor, cuts eastern Khan Yunis from western Khan Yunis. And that's where this attack took place yesterday. The second capture operation attempt along these corridors. Previously on the Moreg corridor a couple weeks ago, I reported on the 12 fighters that came out of a tunnel and attempted to capture Israeli soldiers. The drones came and the fighters withdrew back down into the tunnel. All of them survived, returned to their base safely. And now we have an operation that was yesterday that was at least 20 fighters, a platoon-sized unit coming out in 3 waves to capture Israeli soldiers on the Magan Oz corridor. And these corridors are the corridors that Netanyahu said were existential to Israel's survival, these corridors. This is a base that has hit a forward operating base for the Israelis that was only established a couple of weeks ago. The 20-man platoon-size unit, as I said, the fighters emerged from a tunnel 50 meters from the IDF forward base that was established a couple of weeks ago. One unit goes, raids the base where the soldiers are sleeping. A second unit provides cover along the berms around the outside of the base. And a third team is an artillery team that will allow for the safe withdrawal of the troops. This is the Army radio report of the Israeli investigation into the attack. The attack was carried out by a squad of up to 20 fighters. They don't know. The reason why they don't know how many fighters there was, because as soon as the operation began, as soon as the fighters came out of the tunnel, they fired on the surveillance camera that they knew was there and took down Israel's surveillance camera. So the Israelis don't actually know any of these hard numbers because the battle began before anyone had footage of what was happening, and a certain number of the fighters withdrew. So the position was on, as I said, the Magan Oz corridor or Western Khan Yunis. The fighters emerged from a tunnel shaft 40 to 50 meters from the defensive position and split into three groups, says Army Radio. Beginning of the attack, the fighters fired at the observation camera and hit it. So the observation was less effective, and the Israeli soldiers only discovered the infiltration after the Qassam fighters were inside the Israeli base, and they have no idea. The fighters had tactical vests, Yassins, Shawads, guerrilla action devices, breaching charges to get into the building, and they were carrying stretchers, according to Army Radio, to return captured soldiers. And I said the IDF doesn't know how many were involved in the operation because some withdrew before the Israelis even showed up. And this battle would have been a mess for the Israelis, but they got air support just in time to prevent.
It's bad enough that Israel has not rescued like any of its hostages except in like meager trade deals. How devastating would it be if the resistance captured more Israeli hostages?
The full unit from being wiped out and the soldiers from being captured. That is just out this morning.
Morale is already trash, you know, in Israel. It doesn't seem like it's going to improve.
I think we will see. We'll see if Qassam had cameras on that operation. We'll track this operation coming up and try to show you some visuals in the coming weeks on the show. But there was also a fresh operation in Khan Yunis this week, number 10. 13 artillery operations and 5 qualitative operations in Khan Yunis this week. So we can go to video number 10. Thank you. So this is the stones of this is David Stones. This is the defensive operation against Gideon's chariots. Here we have the fighter. He's quoting Muhammad al-Daif, the chief of staff of the Qassam Brigade, saying, "We are here. I'm rooted in this land, and in it are thousands of seeds. No matter how the tyrants try to uproot us, the seeds will sprout. We will continue on this path, and we will not stop." You can see the fighters in tactical vests, while they're talking here, the one fighter says, "No, look out the window. Look out the window. There's a D9." And they show that they're just right under the noses of these Israeli troops. And then you're going to see here an elevated Yassin strike targeting a tank that's behind that berm there that you can see at the top of the screen. Again, if you're not watching these videos, everything around is completely destroyed. The buildings that are standing look like they could be pushed over by hand. But this operation you're going to see here, the Sadmiya. This is a shock device detonate. It's going to blow the camera out of the cameraman's hands there. So we have a Yassin strike against the tank. Then we have the IED against the tank. Now we're watching the Yassin Archer reload and fire. And now we're going to watch them get away. And as they're going away, this fighter, masked fighter, says, "The men of Qassam, the men of God, we are giants on the battlefield. We are only a few meters away from them, and we're going to show you." And they carried out the off. At the end, the masked fighter here is saying, "We say to the entire Islamic nation, God will not forgive those who abandon us, will not forgive those who left Gaza alone." Fighters on the front lines in Khan Yunis able to carry out these operations. There's no operational control in Khan Yunis. Next one is number 11. This is 2 Yassin strikes versus the same Namr troop carrier. You're going to see 2 fighters here, one with a camera. Again, part of the difficulty of getting to them is getting through all the destruction. But there you see in the distance the 2 Namr troop carriers with their rear door.
Yeah, it looks like they're using backup cameras.
Of getting to them is getting through all the destruction. But there you see in the distance the 2 Namr troop carriers with their rear door facing the weakest point of the vehicle, fires direct hit. You see it from 2 cameras because the 2 fighters have 2 cameras. And they're going to go back behind cover here and they're going to reload. You can see how easy it is.
Well, maybe it wasn't a whatever.
Put the rocket motor in to these Yassins, which have made them such an appropriate weapon for this battle. And again, just look at the destruction. There's just random pieces that were houses, just the uprights and supports of the buildings sitting there with the rebar sticking out. All of the buildings collapsed because when Israel failed at their military objectives, they have gone straight ahead on their objectives of making Gaza unlivable. So they're not going to win the war, but they're going to carry out this genocide that we've been watching in horror now for 685 days, because it began immediately on October 7th with serious attacks. Number 12 here. This is an interesting operation, artillery operation in Khan Yunis. You can see the fighters again, detailed maps. We're going to see in this one the use of drone footage to see where these land. A lot of times these operations we don't get to see where the mortars land, but we know there's injuries from them. The Israelis admit to those from time to time. But here we can see an Israeli base. You can see the triangle. That's over a tank there, and that's a set of buildings that Israel has left. There's a moonscape around it, but there's 3 or 4 clustered buildings there that the Israelis are using as a base. And you can see by that footage, the drone footage, that those strikes are landing right inside the base. They're landing within feet with heavy mortars, 120 millimeter mortars, landing within feet of armored vehicles and Israeli troop positions. And these are joint operations that you're seeing happening here. So you see them tie their headbands. This is Sarai al-Quds and the Qassam brigades. You're also going to see the Nasser Salahuddin Popular Resistance Committees in these operations multiple times. And these operations, there's the Nasser Salahuddin brigades, Popular Resistance Committees. These are 60 millimeter, 80 millimeter, and 120 millimeter mortars. Qassam has made these mortars since the disengagement. Even before that, they used them against the settlements inside Gaza. And these are Rajoum 114 millimeters. These are also Qassam built rocket artillery system that you won't see anywhere else in the world. Now we're going to go back up north. So we'll take a quick look at that map again. So now we're going up to Shujaiya on the eastern side of Gaza City. Operational security had them hold back these videos, but they were released. These are from Gideon's Chariots, so they weren't from this week, but the videos were released this week. So let's take a look at them. Number 14 we are at right now. The fighter says that we are the Shujaiya battalion and we are advancing on this Israeli position. You can see the fighters are ready. They've been ready in this position. That is an Israeli position that you're looking at in that building. And here they're going to fire F-7 North Korean fragmentation warheads that we've seen throughout the war, and anti-tank warheads. There's a FN Mag machine gun, possibly captured from the Israelis. There were FN Mags in Gaza before the war, but we know that they've also captured them in the war.
And that sniper rifle is I don't know, it's a Palestine-made sniper rifle. I forget the name of it.
And again, this fighter's denoted that he's the Shujaiya battalion. And we're going to see here, we're going to see these strikes. We're going to see these again after as well, because I want to put the audio in so you can see, because these are 4 strikes hitting the tank and the D9 in here. Here's one against the tank. You can clearly see a direct hit. We're seeing that from multiple cameras. Again, you can see how easy it is to reload the Yassin, and you can move up here, and this is going to be against a D9 armored bulldozer. He's going to get a direct hit on the side cage. If that's not an automatic, and there's an armored troop carrier, that's going to be the final Yassin strike of this set of operations. But this next one has audio in, because I want you to hear the 4 Yassin strikes on the 2 vehicles, one after another.
It's called the Ghoul. I'll be right back.
So just pretty remarkable timing and planning of that operation that would make a mess of that D9. And you can see it burning with the first strike before it gets hit with the second strike. So again, organized operations. Let's look at number 16. This 16 took a bit of editing. This is a Dragunov SVD, Iranian SVD sniper operation. You can see the soldiers on the back of the tank there. I had to edit out the shooting, but you can see it creates a cook-off, hits the ammunition on the back of the Merkava tank there and creates a cook-off. So the ammo is burning. Maybe tomorrow I can throw my Twitter handle underneath there. All the uncensored videos are all archived on my Twitter handle. And the next one is also, if we go to 17, this also had to be edited because this is a direct hit on a tank commander who's coming out of the top of his hatch on his Merkava tank, and he was hit as well. So you can see the full video of that. That was just a short shot. So that's 17. So 18, we're at 18. One more here. So you can see the soldier, his helmet there with the triangle, and then we have to match community guidelines for YouTube. He just disappears there. But you can imagine why he disappeared, and you can watch the full uncensored video on my X account. So one more here. We have 19. Sarai al-Quds put together a mixtape of their return to sender operations. You can see there's Thaqib, their EFP, there's the anti-tank mines, there is the unexploded Israeli US supplied Israeli airdrop bomb. That's the Thaqib, the EFP. The fighter says, don't worry about your planes. And this is interesting here because this is actually Trevor Ball identified this as actually an illumination round. So what they got this round that unexploded, but it's just for illumination. So Sarai al-Quds has emptied the illumination filler in the weapon and refilled it with unexploded ordnance. So turned an illumination shell into an IED back into an artillery shell. So this mixtape is showing the various operations that took place by Sarai al-Quds in Shujaiya neighborhood. And there's the Mark 84 2,000-pound bomb. We saw that before, but they harvested it. And these detonations, this is kind of a best of that they're showing us here. And at the end of this video, you're going to see the M113 robot truck bombs, tank bombs that the Israelis have been using. Again, so this is from Shujaiya. This would be from July. There's the tank operation that we saw in July as well, but they put this together with some new operations to show us the third battle of Shujaiya that took place during Gideon's Chariots, which is David Stone's for the Palestinians. There you see the M113. That's what happens to the M113 after it's detonated. And they also show tracks from other vehicles that the resistance has destroyed. But the Israelis are using these robot bombs all over Gaza right now at really high frequency. There's only 4,000 of them.
What the fuck?
The Americans gave them to them.
That's what's left of the truck bomb.
That's what happens to the M113 after it's detonated. They also show tracks from other vehicles that the resistance has destroyed. But the Israelis are using these robot bombs all over Gaza right now with really high frequency. There's only 4,000 of them that exist in their stores. The Americans gave them to them, and they are too thin for the modern battlefield. There's tracks from a different vehicle that was struck. So the M113s have been just turned into bombs, and they create massive explosions that take out whole blocks because they can be filled with explosives. So they become a much larger vessel to carry explosives than the bombs. There you see pieces of a bulldozer from the spoils of war, the leftovers that the Israelis
incredibly barbaric.
Usually they drag the vehicles all the way home back to Israel. There's the inside of the M113 just completely emptied out after those blasts. So that is Shujaiya. Let's move to Jabalia. Just a couple quick ones from Jabalia. Here we have a fighter. This is also from Gideon's Chariots, David Stone's defense. So this is from weeks past, probably late July, these operations were executed. You can see the fighter Mousehole there. Now we see a Namur troop carrier. The troop carrier parks right outside the house, and there's a soldier that I blurred out there. He exits. There's the 3 soldiers exiting out the back of the Namur troop carrier with the triangles. There's their sort of sloppy stack as they're about to enter this building. And the Qassam brigades have Mousehole. Right here, you can see a shawad through that Mousehole directly at those soldiers. So that is a devastating operation. The next one, and then they return to their base safely. Here we see them packing the shawad. I haven't seen this too often, but you can see Qassam packing the shawad and wiring it up during this operation. This is going to be targeting a D9 armored bulldozer.
Yeah, those things are meant to take out tanks, and they just... Those soldiers had one tossed at their feet. Not good.
And one interesting thing about this is look at how many pressure plates they brought. Usually we see Saraya use 1 pressure plate, but Qassam is using here 3 or 4 pressure plates. So to increase the area that they cover for the vehicle to hit. So that's an interesting development that we are seeing here from Qassam that we don't usually see, using multiple to create the minefield. So there's multiple places to trip the minefield when they're burying these. And they're burying these EFPs, and now they're showing the destruction of the D9 bulldozer. You can see the tracks from the vehicle and the what's it called? The shovel, the shovel of the bulldozer there, like bigger than
the bucket.
Than a human. So operations in Shujaiya, successful operations.
Wow.
Jabalia, these are held back because of operational security reasons.
Totally destroyed.
We saw it pretty much the next day. The Khan Yunis one was also from the next day. And then just one more here. We have Sarai al-Quds Central Brigade. I just want to bring this one into you because actually this is the last one in Jabalia. These are Iranian heavy mortars being fired in the battle in Jabalia. The one that comes up next is Sarai al-Quds in the central, in the middle camps. And I brought this one just because now this is every brigade fighting. So we saw from the far north to Gaza City. This is the middle camps, and we saw Khan Yunis. Rafah is completely ethnically cleansed and is a collaborator colony right now. No operations there, although there were mortar operations targeting Israeli positions in those areas. So you can see Sarai still has the ability to launch these rockets 685 days into the war. And we saw Sarai al-Quds on last week's show. They had the rockets marked with manufactured in 2025. So they wanted you to see that they're manufacturing rockets at the moment. So pretty packed week for the resistance report and resistance operations heading into this brutal battle in Gaza City that Israel wants to ethnically cleanse 1 million people from Gaza City. No signs in any way a sign of the resistance not being ready for what the Israelis have in store, because we're seeing it all across Gaza in stark relief this week. So that is the resistance report for day 685 of Israel's criminal genocidal war in Gaza.
Incredible.
Thank you, as always, John.
It's the latest from Drop Site. Two hours ago, Hamas offered major concessions in new Gaza ceasefire proposal. From its perspective, Hamas has now presented its bottom line, and if Israel won't make a deal on these terms, it never will. Hamas formally agreed last week to a series of major concessions, and Israel has not responded. For an initial 60-day ceasefire drafted by Egypt and Qatar. This was like the very first proposition, like we're back to square one with the ceasefire. So probably why it's not breaking news. So to begin immediate negotiations for the release of all our hostages and end of the war under conditions acceptable to Israel. Well, what does that mean? That could literally mean anything. The Greater Israel Project is the condition that's acceptable to Israel. In July, Hamas agreed in full with 10 of the 13 terms laid out in what President Donald Trump said was the final proposal for a ceasefire deal. The outline was drafted by Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and Israel Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer. According to the framework, Hamas would agree to release a total of 10 living Israeli captives and 18 deceased over a 2-month period. There are believed to be approximately 50 remaining Israeli captives in Gaza, 20 of whom Israel believes are alive. Israel in turn would free a large number of Palestinians held in Israeli prisons, military detention, and other facilities. In its latest offer, Hamas agreed to a formula that would free fewer than 500 Palestinians. That it would free 500 fewer Palestinians from Gaza, snatched by Israel after October 7th, than it originally demanded. It's a concession measured by 500 people. Hamas consented to proposed Israeli buffer zones already encircling Gaza that would extend deeper into the enclaves, some cases agreeing to points that stretch 1,500 meters into the territory. There's no negotiating with the boa constrictor that's around your neck and eating your heart. You know what I mean? Like, journalists are pillars of the community, you know. Yeah, we saw this on the electronic intifada. Oh yeah. Palestinian rights, prisoners' rights groups released a new report today based on testimonies provided to lawyers visiting Gaza detainees held in Israel's underground Reykjavik section of Ramallah prison and the Sid Timin. I've seen that before. This is a brutal Israeli military camp. Both notorious sites of torture. Isn't that where Abu Zubaydah is being held? We share the full report. Enduring hell, Gaza detainees face severe Israeli torture and terror behind bars. The banana position. The detainee's legs cuffed to the lower part of the chair. The back chair is positioned to the side. Oh, the back of the chair is positioned to the side, and his hands cuffed to each other and pressured by the interrogators to the lower part of the chair. This position would mean that the detainee's body forms an arch, extremely harming the detainee's chest and stomach. The detainees are forced into this position for more than the body can handle, thus the body falls to the back on the floor or on the knees of an interrogator sitting behind the chair. And yeah, we saw J.D. Vance get heckled. Besides the TPS update, I didn't really have anything else in terms of ICE movements.
To make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go...
Hang on. No, bro.
Today is July 29th, 2025. Not yet 7 months into fascism under dictator Donald Trump, and I am in South Florida. The concentration camp is down that road. The public is allowed to go about 0.2 of a mile before coming to a military-style checkpoint, at which time you have to turn around.
It's very ominous looking. I don't have a news tab. I think I'm gonna leave it there, but I'll be back playing some RuneScape here in a bit. If you want to support the YouTube channel, like the video and subscribe. Fuck Israel, free Palestine. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care, y'all.
How are you? I miss you a lot, really. Today there's a lot of drones. I'm gonna sing a song today with drone. شيل شيل يا جمالي شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالهيل ليل يا ليلو ويل ويل عالظالمي ويل ويل من الله لا أسهر على نجوم الليل أنا ناديله شيل شيل يا جمالي شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالهيل ليل يا ليلو ويل ويل عالظالمي ويل ويل من الله لا أسهر على نجوم الليل أنا ناديله شيل شيل يا جمالي شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالهيل يا ليلو ويل ويل شيل يا زماني شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالليل ويل ويل عالظالمين ويل 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 بأسر على نجوم الليل شيل يا زماني شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالليل ويل ويل عالظالمين ويل 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 بأسر على نجوم الليل شيل يا زماني شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالليل ويل ويل عالظالمين ويل 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 بأسر على نجوم الليل شيل يا زماني شيل يا حوطك بالله دم الشهيد معطر بالليل ويل ويل عالظالمين